Hello and welcome to another COMP3218 game design and development video from the University of Southampton. This week we're going to be looking at our second set of courseworks. My name is Tom Blount, I'm one of the lecturers on the course, and today I am joined by...
Hi, I'm Callum and I'm one of the demonstrators on the course.
Fab. Callum, can you tell us all about what we asked the students to do for this coursework?
Yeah, so we asked them to build a game with a story. We wanted them to build a narrative engine so that the gameplay decisions and story affect each other.
A number of different game writing techniques. Brilliant. Let's take a look at our first game. Alright, and this game is Hidden Village. So, you know, nice little title screen, lovely background music, off to a good start.
Good, like, Pokemon kind of...
sort of aesthetic, yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, let's hit instructions, and...
Stardew Valley, that's the one I was thinking of.
Okay, so they may not have retained all of the things they learned in the tutorials coursework, because...
This is a lot of text to just immediately dump on the player.
Okay, let's see. The game begins with a traveller searching for a new home and arrives in the hidden village. The villagers let him stay, but with a condition. In order to prove himself, he has to protect the village from the ghosts coming at night, who are trying to steal a treasure that is hidden in the village. The game is separated into two parts, day and night. Each day will last for maximum 35 seconds, in which he has to prepare for the night by going to each house and ask for loot. And each night with at least 40 seconds in which he is fighting the ghosts, and is repeated for 5 days. During nighttime, the fighter will have to avoid contact and kill the ghosts to earn coins, which can be used during daytime. Surviving the night gives the hero the ability to choose between helping the village and gaining their trust, or upgrading his weapon and losing his credibility. Trust will give a bonus to every single loot, with trust +1 armor with trust 3 is actually 4 new arrows. I don't quite understand that. Finally, by looking at the trust level bar with... So yeah, this is a very dense bit of text where they're telling all of the information up front. It would maybe be nice if this was, you know, sort of drip fed over the course of the game. But I guess we will see what we can do. So let's start the game itself. More text. Lovely. You are a traveller who is currently looking for a new home and happened to pass by a hidden village. However, the village is encountering some difficulties as there are invaders trying to steal a treasure that is hidden in the village. The villagers agreed for you to stay in the village, so some of this is a bit duplicated from the tutorial as well, so it feels like, again, this could be a nice way of drip feeding some of that information.
I think, like... The block of text is made a little bit harder to pass with the choice of font. Like the kind of full caps, very blocky, angular text is kind of a strain to read.
Okay,
so wait, what do we?
So we've got 30 seconds until nightfall, where we get to visit the houses to get stuff, I guess. I don't know if this is at the cost of trust, but
it looks like you're stealing their doormats.
It does. So, I mean, on the one hand, nice information design, because it's nice to see which place we've been to already. So can I actually leave the village, or I can?
Yeah.
Okay. I think they move about the same speed, but if I'm moving diagonally, I think I go a bit faster.
No, excellent.
Okay, so I've got... I don't know if I have to kill the ghosts or just survive.
Well, you've got 7 seconds until day, so...
Yeah. Do I have to kill them all in that time?
Guess if we leave one alive...
you have to make a choice. Upgrade the weapon for -1 trust. Help the village for +1 trust. I think I haven't got any trust to spend, so I don't know if I'll go down to -1, but... I think I was doing okay with my weapon already, so I'll +1 trust. Ooh, I've got to be running around stealing doormats again. So we got more lives.
So you didn't kill the ghosts, and that was fine. It didn't complain about that.
Yeah, so maybe I can just run away from them all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although they might get faster.
Did that? Already visited this house, okay.
Ooh. I like the music.
Yeah, it's nice. There's a very nice dramatic shift as well between day and night.
Ooh, I may be misremembering this, but I feel like on the first night there was only 4 ghosts spawning at a time, and now there's 5.
I think
so. That's some good like increase in the kind of
The pacing,
the challenge at least, if not necessarily narrative pacing, but.
Oh, interesting. That's kind of nice. So if you get,
you've got like
you hit, you've got a little. They move away from you for a little bit.
Yeah, that's
nice bit of design.
Yeah.
Just gonna keep running away from them. I've got a little conga line of ghosts. Okay.
Okay.
I tell you what, we'll do a trust run first, and then an anti-trust run. So I'm just going to keep going for trust. Okay, so there isn't a huge amount of other gameplay as far as I can tell. So perhaps it would be nice if there was a little bit of sort of incidental dialogue when you go to somebody's house and take their. I don't know what lives represents now that I think about it. What are they giving me? Health potions
so
or
there's 6
whatever.
of them now,
yeah.
So.
But a nice little opportunity there for some dialogue, which could be influenced by how many ghosts you've killed, your trust, little details like that. But otherwise, not too bad. Like gives you a nice sort of break in the pacing.
They said that the number of ghosts you kill, like if you kill ghosts, you get more money to spend, but you don't seem to have any money or have anything to spend it on. So I don't know what that's about.
Okay, should we jump into the mark
yes.
scheme and have a look at... so first we'll be looking at the overall quality, and we'll start by looking at the aesthetics.
So how... I think, if we look at the aesthetics of things, you can probably hear the audio better than I can, but I think the graphics and the audio are... I would say they're appealing. They seem to be nice and complementary. They fit well with the setting.
I'd say they're really quite lovely.
What
about the information design? So we've got the various...
information is there?
Yeah, we've got our various different stats at the top of the screen. So trust, time... time's maybe in a little bit of an awkward... So the stats are all there. Perhaps they're in a bit of an awkward location because I'm definitely not glancing up to the right there while being chased by a pack of ghosts. But it
feels like
it's still shown.
You've got the little doormats on the houses
showing when
you visited. Although one thing I think, and then when you go back, it says, "Oh, you've already visited this house." But it might be nice because I'm not certain exactly what the houses are giving you. So it might be nice if, when you go to the house, it comes up with a little bit of text that's like, +1 life or ammo or whatever.
It actually does do that, but it does it over there in the top left.
Okay. So that's again, that maybe it's just a.
So yeah, take a
text needs to be a bit.
See.
Further in, or.
I missed a house there. There, +1 lives.
Oh, so it does.
Oh, I think I get more ammo? Yeah, that said +1 ammo, and it went from 72 to 75. So I guess that's the effect killing ghosts has?
Maybe.
So... I feel like lives are a much more valuable resource, though.
Are there any, sound effects indicating, any important information?
There is some when you fire your arrow, but other than that, there's not, a death sound or anything as far as I can tell.
Okay, so we've definitely got all the key information shown. I feel like it's kind of on the boundary of being clearly, just because that the kind of UI chunk in the top left, it's just a little bit far away to be able to check regularly. That's
the thing. You're not playing it, but you also didn't notice that it was there. So it's that's a good argument for it not being 100%. I also. Thinking about it, I've just noticed why I'm fighting ghosts. It's because ghosts don't have to worry about pathing around fences.
I mean, that is...
a sensible design choice. But yeah, sorry, aesthetics and information design. I think it is getting close to clear. All the information is definitely there. Perhaps it could be done slightly more obviously, like you say, with an audio effect, like a little ding saying that you've got something, or the light slowly fading from dark to light as the time increases, or something like that. But otherwise, yeah, it's pretty good, I would say.
I think definitely pushing up, but not quite at excellent.
Yeah, in fact, shall we say it's halfway between the two there?
Yes. So then with the graphics and the audio, we've got audio effects, we've got music, we've got graphics. I think they're all consistent, complementary, and pretty appealing.
Yeah, I agree.
Are the graphics effective? And
I would say the graphics are effective, yeah. Like, there's a limited amount of them that they need to affect, but otherwise, yeah, I would say they are.
So that gets them solidly up to excellent for both of those. For the graphics, would you say they are thematically resonant? Would you put them up to prize-worthy for graphics?
So I'm not quite sure I would, and that's partly because I'm not sure what the theme is.
Yeah, so I know from talking to them in the labs what the theme is supposed to be. But yeah, I'm not sure that is.
So yeah, there's probably some things that we'll talk about when we talk more about the brief and the design, but the theme isn't hugely clear, so I think we can't say that the graphics are thematically resonant as a result.
Yeah, but solidly excellent, pretty much across the board there.
Brilliant.
So, meaningful play. How's it work? What are the mechanics and how are the controls?
Okay, so we've got collecting stuff during the daytime, and we've got fighting ghosts during the nighttime. Not necessarily a huge variety in the mechanics. We can collect arrows and we can shoot arrows effectively. We can collect lives and lose lives. Oh, interesting. Why have I got 4 trust at the minute and 187 ammo? Has it not correctly reset? And now I've got
2 of you.
Interesting. Do I have double the shooting power?
Oh,
I do.
Does it consume twice as much ammo? No.
Interesting. Okay, a small bug we have discovered then. But yeah, given that the trust and stuff doesn't seem to have reset either, I'm going to quit out of this. And I'll just reload that to make sure we're not getting any oddness as we're looking at the story engine. But that's something that will come up in the next category. So yeah, meaningful play though. Yeah, it's got a reasonable set of mechanics, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so. They've got a set of consistent mechanics for sure. The question is, like, are they complementary? Like, they interact with each other. I guess, yeah, you've got the thing, you can run around to pick up lives, and then...
So...
Yeah, because, like, killing the enemies gives you bigger rewards during the day. So yeah, I think they're complementary mechanics, right?
Yeah, I think the reason we're umming and ahhing about it is it goes back to the information design. Like, that link between the number of ghosts we've killed and the rewards going up isn't hugely clear either.
No.
But you're right, there clearly is a relationship, and certainly they've told us so in the little tutorial bit. So I would say, yeah, those mechanics are relatively complementary.
I don't think I would say it's a wide set of mechanics, though.
No, I'm not sure I would.
Like, you can shoot, you can pick stuff up, but...
Okay, so I clicked upgrade my weapon that time, which was -1 trust. I'm at 0 trust, so I don't know if it can go below 0. I mean, presumably not. So I don't know if that means it's not happened, or if I'm just, bottomed out at 0. So again, information design not hugely clear on if that was, like, whether that action succeeded or not. But I guess I'll try out my new one.
I mean, it shoots.
It does. But I can't.
Scores.
So the thing is, based on the tutorial text, I'm not really sure what the upgraded weapon actually does anyway.
Yeah,
I can't tell a huge amount of difference.
Yeah, actually, like with the with the weapon upgrade run, I think it might be worth bringing the information design just a little bit down because it's not really being shown.
Okay. But in terms of mechanics, we were at a set of complementary mechanics, but just not quite a wide set.
So that's solid good.
Brilliant.
Controls. How are the controls?
Yeah, pretty good actually.
I've noticed that you can shoot diagonally, which is always nice.
It is. It's a little tricky to do, and I think this ties maybe more into the sort of meaningful play thing. The kiting the ghosts around can be sort of a little bit finicky at times because, like I say, the direction that you're moving seems to affect the speed that you go at. But otherwise, it controls pretty fine. They you move and shoot sort of the controls are very tight. There's no particular lag. Overall they work quite nicely.
Yeah, and it's what WASD in space.
I think arrows in space. Oh no, WASD works as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, smooth, usable controls, I would say.
Would you say they're intuitive?
I would. Yes.
Okay. I don't think these controls work. They're standard for a reason, but we can't say they're novel because
they're standard.
Which seems a little bit mean, but
not at all. If that's a good thing to choose from.
Yeah. Bugs. We've found one bug so far.
Yeah, particularly interesting one. I'm not sure how we caused it or if we can reproduce it.
So it does kind of completely ruin a second run. However, it does only happen if you've already finished the game.
Seems to be, yeah. So
I don't think I would say it's a major bug.
Because
the difference between pressing restart game and closing and reopening the game, I don't feel is that big an issue. During the main run through the game, we don't seem to have found any bugs yet.
That is true. Okay, I was going to say maybe that's a little bit generous, but I think you're probably right.
So, and I think it's fair to say this is reasonably complex.
Yeah, fairly.
So
certainly complex enough for small sort of portfolio prototype kind of thing.
Yeah, and we've got, I think, stuff like the fact that killing more ghosts, in theory, as far
allegedly,
we allegedly has an effect on how effective resource collection is. I think
I'm out of ammo.
But so we've got reasonably complex but infrequent minor bugs, I think.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where we are.
Okay. So, on to the brief. So the main bit here is we asked them to have a story engine where the game world affects the story and the story affects the game world.
So
the main thing, I feel here, the main issue with this is there doesn't really seem to be much of a story.
Yeah, I was going to say this is the issue that we're going to run up against here. Is there is a bit of a lack of story. There is the what do you call it? The text at the start that sets things up, and there's the text at the end, but there's no real story running through it.
Yeah, you've got.
It's just you're in a place. There are some ghosts. Fight the ghosts.
Which, there is narrative, but there's not. Yeah, as you say, there's not a huge amount there. And so you've got during the game you can choose to either take the route that gives you more trust, or that is a lot of ghosts. Are you?
I've got 15 seconds left and 6 arrows. I think I can make it.
Okay. You've got the route where you can choose to be selfish or to help them, and that does change which. If you're not getting the trust of the villagers, kill them or leave.
Interesting. So for the bad ending, we get a second choice. I'm not sure.
Why weren't we given the option to kill them in the good ending?
Let's kill them and take over the village. Bad ending, you have. So I'm curious what would have happened if I'd have clicked leave the village. Is that just another type of bad ending? Is that a neutral ending?
It would have been nice to see the kill the villagers like be another round of combat, right? Like,
yeah, that's sort of what I was expecting.
Switch out the ghost sprites, and then you get to run around and kill all of them. So yeah, I think there are sort of an example of the game mode impacting the story, because you make one of two decisions, and that picks which ending you get. But I don't think there is anywhere that the story affects the gameplay.
Yeah. And it feels like some of it is kind of narratively inconsistent as well. Like, that choice is an odd one, because it's, help the village or upgrade your weapon. And it's like, remind me why I'm upgrading my weapon? It's because I'm killing ghosts on behalf of the village, so why does that decrease their trust?
Yeah. It's it is kind of an odd one.
But also, high trust is better for me than upgrading my weapon, because trust gives me more... So if I get +1 arrow and I've got 3 trust, I actually get +4 arrows. So trust is more valuable to me than upgrading my weapon anyway. So I'm leaping ahead a little bit to agency.
Yeah.
So yeah, story engine. So
game mode to story, we have... Okay, so if we start at poor, going towards the bottom end of where they could be, we've got some support for story elements in the game, but the game mode has no real impact on the story, and I don't think that's fair, because it does change which ending you get. But it's not much of an impact.
So the thing is, those choices that have an impact on the ending are they're not part of gameplay. They are effectively narrative choices that affect the narrative.
I guess that's a good point. Yeah, I suppose picking 2 options from a dialogue isn't really gameplay.
It could be, but they have almost set up this set up this thing where it is separate to the gameplay.
So in that case, it's that we have these regular narrative options that affect the gameplay, but no gameplay effect on the narrative.
It feels like that's sort of where we are.
Okay, so in the story to game world, would that count as a few sparse or minor examples of where the story impacts the game world?
I don't think it's quite that low. So what does it affect? So the narrative choice we make affects the narrative choice we make affects our trust. That affects a number of the numbers sort of in the daytime section while we're going around talking to people. It also then affects the ending. So what would a pass be for?
So a pass is sparse or minor examples where the story impacts the gameplay.
Okay.
And above that, a satisfactory would be some examples of where the story impacts the game world. And there are examples, but you get at the end of each night, you choose one of 2 options, but I feel like they're fairly minor examples because they don't have much of an effect on gameplay.
And this goes back to what we were saying earlier. They don't have much story is the thing. So you're right, it kind of is pretty minor. It is the totality of their story, but it's just not very much of it.
So I think in terms of story affecting gameplay, they've got a pass, but in terms of gameplay affecting the story, I don't think beyond the obvious if you fail the story ends, which doesn't really count. I don't think there's any way in which the gameplay affects the story.
Yeah, I'm trying to sort of think of like there's this gameplay section where we collect stuff, but it's not like the more stuff we demand from the villagers, the more our trust goes down, which affects the story. It's not like the more ghosts we kill, the more our trust goes up.
And like this like the collecting stuff from the villagers, yeah. It's
there we go.
Oh,
my twin's back.
If we keep doing this, will we eventually end up with a small army?
I don't know. I'm going to keep him around, actually.
I imagine that will probably make this... Can they injure both of you? Yeah.
Yes. I know.
So
it's suddenly much worse.
Incredibly difficult. Oh no. Can you like run into the corner of the map to get you both into the same position?
Probably.
Right. Anyway, where were we? So that's we've done that. So that's the story engine. The next part is agency, player choice. So we've got branching points. There are in fact 5 branching points. You've got the end of each night, and then
arguably the one at the end as well.
Yeah. Although I think you only have a branch there if you chose the evil route.
Yeah.
But still, there are some branching points. Is there several branching points?
So there are. Yeah, they're very tenuously branching points is the thing.
Like it's kind of the same branching point multiple times.
Well, it's a branch that yeah, exactly. It's like basically a repeated choice, and that branch immediately sort of gets joined back together, which is a fine way of managing sort of the exploding state space. But because it has such a limited effect on everything except the final ending, it's sort of difficult to tell. The other question. So I would say they've got a number of different choices, or the same choice a number of times at least. That's probably sufficient to count for sort of branching state. The issue is that choice an interesting one?
Yeah, it's a really minor choice.
So I still don't know.
If you were to choose if you were to just make it one choice, where at the beginning it's like every night I'm going to be a dick for the whole game, or I'm going to be nice for the whole game, it would do the same thing. And
it's one of these inherent choices with moral choice systems in games. Like if you look at Mass Effect or something, it's very rare that somebody will do 50% Paragon and 50% Renegade, because you only get the best ending if you go all in one way or all in the other. But that aside, like in terms of just the mechanical effects of the choice, I don't know what effect upgrading my weapon has or why that's good. In fact, trust seems not only better for the good ending, but it seems better because I get more stuff out of the villagers if they trust me.
Yeah, and in terms of like how it affects the story, like it, you get multiple choices, but that it only has one effect. Either you get the ending where you become the king, or the ending where you kill everyone,
or the ending where you leave. But
that's not. That doesn't. Yeah, that's the difference between those last two is narrative, though.
Yeah.
Which I guess yes, you've got 3 options really.
So before we get too bogged down, what would a satisfactory be for this?
So a satisfactory would be some branching points, but I'd be tempted to put it at a pass, which is some minor branching points, because again, like most of the branching points don't have much of an effect on the story or the gameplay as a whole.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you for that.
Okay, agency. How much agency do you feel you have? How many?
So yeah, this is the bit that I was talking about with those sort of like, the choice is interesting. So I'm gonna get +1 trust and then spend that trust, and then see what happens. But yeah, the choice isn't hugely interesting because of the reasons I've said. It feels like one is just obviously a better choice, like in every aspect, both narrative and gameplay. Again, sort of one of the things that maybe you could do to improve this is sort of have that closer link between the story and gameplay, where perhaps the villagers each night ask you to do a particular thing during the gameplay. Like, for example, I don't know, go and collect berries from each of these bushes while being attacked by all of the ghosts. So you can either choose not to do it because you're too busy not dying, or you can sort of try and go above and beyond that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. They definitely that there's definitely a few ways that kind of help versus selfishness, selflessness. That narrative thing could have been done in gameplay.
So again, before we get too bogged down, what would a satisfactory for that section be? Or a
satisfactory would be some interesting choices. And I don't. So the difference between a pass and a satisfactory is that a pass is few interesting choices, and satisfactory is some. I mean, again, you'll have a better sense of this as actually playing it, but it feels to me like there are almost no interesting choices.
I'll perhaps be somewhat generous and say the choices are not as interesting as they could be, but they're not totally uninteresting. I've just noticed the fence suddenly disappears during the night.
Interesting.
Hang on. So do you remember earlier when I was saying, oh, well, I'm at 0 trust, so I don't know if my trust hasn't gone down or if just nothing's happened? So it
didn't do anything.
So I got the +1 trust, and now I've actually spent that +1 trust. Okay, so again, failure of the information design there, perhaps. So it looks like an upgraded weapon just shoots 2 arrows for the price of 1. Although I kind of stick by my original point. I don't know if this is actually useful, because I'm just firing 2 arrows at each ghost, and they all still die in 1 arrow. So unless I've properly got a conga chain of them behind me, it's not that useful. And in which case that makes the first choice absolutely uninteresting, because I can't pick one of the options.
Yeah, and I don't know how much trust you need to get the good ending. So if it's the case that you need to help the village every single night to get the good ending, then
is there a middle ending?
And that means then the first ending, the first choice is kind of the only one that affects the story. I might not be the case.
You have their.
You can do a middle ending or something. But...
So you have their game notes. They hopefully should have included a little thing telling us there.
Which one is it? Hidden Village. Here we go. Narrative structure. Okay, right. They have included the if you die, the story ends as part of the narrative structure.
Yeah, it's not, but. I mean, it's a reasonable thing to include for completeness' sake, but yeah, normally we don't count a game over as an interesting narrative choice.
Okay, so you only need 2 out of 4 trust points to get the good ending.
Okay, so the rest of the trust is more the sort of the gameplay effect of getting more stuff from the villagers during the day.
So yeah, I mean that's it. There's few, arguably one interesting choice. Because again, you get the same choice multiple times, but it's the same choice.
Yeah.
Although the triple arrows are pretty cool, even if they're not necessarily that useful.
That's the thing, they're cool, and occasionally you can line up shots where you can get sort of the most bang for your buck like that. But yeah, overall,
even without that, you won't find it too difficult to get through. So yeah, are we happy to put that at a pass?
I think so.
Interesting choices. Okay. Right. So now we move on to the design and the poetics of gameplay.
So this is all about how...
Sorry, go
on. So I was going to say, this is all about how the mechanics sort of enhance the underlying theme of the story and sort of the different techniques they've used and that kind of thing.
Yes. So we've already kind of touched on this, talking about the story engine, but I don't think there is really much in I don't think the story really. I don't think they go together super well. I don't think they detract from one another, but I don't feel like the gameplay really reinforces the themes of the story.
So I have been waiting a little while to ask this.
Yeah.
Which of the 3 fables that we gave them is this based on? Because I can't tell.
I think they said it was the ants and the grasshopper, but I would double check. Yep, there it is, the ants and the grasshopper.
Yeah, if you'd have pushed me, I would have had to guess that, because that's all about sort of, prepping for the future and that kind of thing. But it doesn't feel like
it's not really about prepping for the future though. Like, even if you just take narratively, regardless of which, like, you can either become the ruler or leave or kill everyone, and like, taken at the most utilitarian point of view, none of those are really that bad for you. Like, yeah, you might not like the fact that you murdered everyone, but to be fair, that's you chose to do that. That wasn't like you could just
forced
leave.
upon you. Yeah.
Like, if you really wanted to push it, like, maybe you wanted to stay in the village, and being selfish stopped that. But again, like,
oh, interesting.
I think it would be a real stretch to say that it
upgrade
actually fits the theme of that.
Well, yeah, like I say, if you'd have pushed me, I think that's the one I would have guessed, because that is maybe the closest. But it's not as though, for example, the theme is like, night 5 is going to be really, really bad. You should stockpile all of your resources in the previous night rather than using them earlier. You should save them for later, kind of a thing. Kind of really sort of playing with that bit of a gamer's brain that says, "Oh, I'll save all of these health potions. I'll need them later."
Yeah, like.
So yeah, it feels like the theme is poorly brought across in this, I would say, and certainly doesn't seem to be sort of mechanically incentivized either.
Yeah, and like, even if we were to be generous and say, okay, maybe they just have they've just read a different theme into the fable, I can't guess what that theme would be.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's some sort of moral of, selflessness versus selfishness, like do you upgrade the weapon or not? But even as we were saying before when we were talking about agency, it's a bit muddled when the reason you're upgrading your weapon is to help these villagers by killing ghosts.
So, here's the thing. They definitely don't work together. The question is, do they detract from one another? And I think that because, like, that main mechanical choice of, taking the selfish route will make it easier for you, but you might not get the good ending, like, it doesn't actually make it much or possibly at all easier for you. So I think that actually kind of, like, undercuts the theme quite significantly.
I think to an extent you might be right. So where would the mark scheme place that?
Where would the mark scheme place that? So if we were to, it depends how severely we think it is, but at most that would put it at a pass, where narrative and gameplay have some conflicts. Some of the mechanics go against the themes of the story.
So I would say maybe it's just a... Oh, go on.
I've just noticed that if we go down to poor, it's got the narrative and gameplay are in conflict. They oppose the themes of the story, brackets, or the themes of the story are unclear.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing.
Yeah. So I don't think they detract from one another too much, but because the theme is also not super clear, I think I would put that at a pass. Not a pass, sorry, a poor.
This is tricky because I want to say I would put it maybe a step above that, because I feel like there is a theme that they're going for, but I don't know what it is. But the problem is that is kind of by definition, a poor.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at their game notes. Do they try and sort of expand on that and sort of talk us through why
So they say the game is based on the moral of the story that you have to work hard and gather things to be prepared for the worst times, or be lazy and don't do it, and you will regret it in the end. So he says that going around during the day and picking up loot from each house is preparing for the worst times. But why would you not do that?
That's the thing. There's no reason, sort of narratively or mechanically, to not do it. In fact, like a lot of games, it would be a case of, well, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play the game, but the game is the fun bit.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I will say, actually, you know what? Their theme is clear, because, yeah, in sort of retrospect, you prepare during the day, you for the dark times, literally the night. But you're right, the mechanics don't necessarily mesh with the theme, and in fact, to a degree, probably undercut it, because there is no mechanical reason not to do that.
See, reading their game notes actually makes me think. Actually, makes me less happy with it. Because I always like thinking about the theme of, like, as we'd said, like that kind of like trade-off between like being selfish or selfless. But they've very much said that it's to do with whether or not you're lazy, and I think it actually is. Like, it is less supportive of that theme.
Perhaps this is the thing, right? Like, it almost feels like they've got two themes that are opposing a bit. They've got the sort of selfish, selfless choice, but then they have that sort of run around the village during the day, collect everything in a limited amount of time, or be lazy and don't. And that's what it is that's confusing it. In which case, so a pass would be they somewhat work against each other, and a pull would be they actively work against each other, but all the themes
are unclear. But because that's the thing, it's that the narrative and gameplay are in conflict, or the themes are unclear.
I will be somewhat generous and say we can say there is, like, we can see the theme after sort of talking to them about it or rather reading through their notes. But even with that in mind, there is still that somewhat conflict between the mechanics.
So, like, partly between them, I guess?
I would say, yeah, between... I think between them. Like, we've had to debate the theme for this long. There's probably still a lack of clarity in it, but otherwise it's a reasonable effort. Which I think brings us on to techniques.
Yes. So how is the pacing? I think the pacing does ascend, and it varies, right? You've got it's nice and chill during the day. It's more dramatic at night. You get increasing numbers of enemies. I think the pacing is pretty decent.
There's a final sort of dramatic peak where you're either thrown out of the village or not. That's kind of set up at the beginning, where they say, you've got 5 nights to earn their trust. Pacing-wise, I think it's okay.
Yeah, it would have been if they had the final option where you get to kill the villagers if you want. It would have been nice to have that be another round of combat, because that would have been like another like really good peak in the tension.
But then they'd have had to write passing code.
Maybe the villagers are also ghosts. It's a twist ending.
But yeah, so here's the thing. A lot of that is mechanical pacing.
Yes, it is not.
And the reason we can't necessarily call it narrative pacing is because, as we've said before, they don't really tell a lot of story throughout the course of the game. They just have it bookended with, bam, here's some dialogue, here's the story, and then bam, here's some dialogue, how it ends. And plus those sort of choices. But again, there's no sort of, there's no real narrative set dressing around it. It's a very clearly sort of mechanical choice. Do you want +1 trust or -1 trust? There's no sort of, it's not couched in the language of, the villagers look at you distrustfully or anything like that. Or there's no sort of moments during the day where you talk to the different villagers who say they're really happy with you or they're really scared about the coming night or that kind of thing.
So if we were just looking at it in terms of gameplay pacing, then I think it would be a very solidly ascending pacing with a clear final peak. But if we talk about it in terms of narrative pacing, it's pretty much flat, or at least sort of unclear, because you don't really know how much the narrative is like swinging one way or the other.
And that's the thing. It's weirdly, it is flat with a clear final peak.
Yeah. So like if we have the ascending pacing with a clear final peak would be good. Unclear or flat would be pass. So I think if we put them in satisfactory, where they've got some ascending pacing, because there's ascending pacing in the gameplay but not the narrative.
Yeah, I mean there's the implicit ascending pacing of, you know, there is a timer that is ticking down, but it's never sort of reinforced during the course of the game. So I would say
that's true.
So I would say a satisfactory is pretty much bang on.
I think if the timer was, I think if there was less time during the day and more time in the nights, I don't know if the duration of the night changes over time. Like, do the nights get longer?
I think they do, yeah. I think the days get shorter as well, for that matter.
Because I get, like, although like that does have, like, it's a very clear mechanical thing, I think that also does have an effect on, like, the kind of narrative pacing of things. It makes it clearer that there is some kind of you know, things are getting more intense. Okay, yeah, satisfactory. And the next one is narrative techniques. So, which narrative techniques have they used?
So we have this sort of text at the beginning, which sort of sets the scene. We have text at the end, which resolves the scene. Technically, the sort of the game world changes a bit at the end. If the villagers like us, there are villagers present. If we leave the village, we're no longer in the village. We're on a road. So there's, you know, some. It's ever so slightly more than just a text dump.
I suppose we've set like.
We've
got a prologue and an epilogue essentially, which have illustrations with them.
Yeah, we can effectively view them as quite simple cutscenes.
I think that would be very generous.
Remember, we're not training 3D artists here or cinematographers. Like,
True.
If they have, you know, sort of like a changing game world and some text over the top, I'm happy to call that a cutscene.
To be fair, even if you were just going to call it an illustration, like that's still
a technique, right?
A narrative technique, yeah. So we've got 2 game rating techniques, I guess.
I can use as many houses now.
So, use of more than one game rating technique would put them in a good. And I think, like, satisfactory would be use of at least one game rating technique, so that, you know, they've got 2. Consistent use of more than one game rating technique would be excellent, and, you know, they've got, at the very end, they've got a few different illustrations, but that's not, like,
they're not different techniques. That's,
yeah. So, I think, yeah.
So I would say
they sit in a good.
Yeah, I would almost be inclined to put them between a satisfactory and a good, because again, there's a very limited amount of story being told over the course of the game is the thing.
This is true. Okay, yeah, between a satisfactory and a good. Alright, feedback is the final point. What have they said about their feedback? Wait, let me check this is the right game notes. Yes. Okay, so they were told during the feedback session, with the initial setup, they were told that the game as it was at that point, you were only able to play as the ant. You collected resources and you fought things off and you did the quote correct thing.
Okay, so what have they changed?
So they added a timer to the daytime cycle, and in that way you can now play like the grasshopper and just not collect the loot if you don't want to, which we've already kind of touched on not really working as a choice.
Yeah, so they've added by adding the so presumably previously during the day you just had to collect everything, so they've given you the theoretical choice to not collect everything. But again, it's definitely not necessarily an effective change for what they were going for, because there's no reason not to do that thing.
Yeah, I mean, as you have argued to me in the past, giving someone the option to not continue the story isn't really an option. And that's it. That's the piece of feedback they have.
Okay. Okay, so let's jump right in at, say, a satisfactory and see where we go from there.
So the satisfactory would be feedback was addressed and the changes have been somewhat successful. And I would agree that it has been addressed, but I don't think it's been at all successful.
I think I would have to agree with you there. So what about a pass?
So a pass would be feedback was addressed, but the changes have limited success. I would probably put it a poor, though. That's feedback was not addressed well, although some other positive changes have been made. And like the fact that we have previously mentioned that like the timer during the day does kind of help to add to the feeling of like the pressure of the situation of you need to keep preparing things, but it doesn't
do the thing that they set out to do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So read out poor for me again.
Feedback was not addressed well, although some other positive changes have been made.
I would almost put that between a poor and a pass, because poor is more sort of like they've not done the thing that they were sort of suggested to perhaps do, but they've done something else instead. Whereas this is, they have tried to do that thing, it's just not been super successful. So I'd put it between the two there.
Okay, I suppose.
Okay, and that brings us to the end of this game. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, and this game is Mr. Fox and the Secret Treasure. So again, nice little title screen here. A little bit simple, but does everything it needs to do. Let's hit play. Okay, some nice little background audio there as well. I'm just going to drop it down a little bit so we can definitely hear you. There we go. Oh, I missed that. So we got A, move left, D, move right, jump, crouch, climb up, interact. So again, front loading some of the tutorial a little bit. Perhaps be nice if this was spread out through more of the game, introducing stuff as and when we need it, but fair enough. So I'll be honest, I missed the first bit about Mr. Fox. Okay.
We have acquired one coin.
We sure have. Now we have more coin.
Oh, some nice little animations there.
Ooh, I want that coin.
Oh, okay.
Okay. To a traditional, woodland buzzsaw there. Okay. That hit me apparently. I'm not sure it did, but okay. I also can't get this. Ooh. Hello? Who or what are you?
That is
terrifying.
Traditional woodland
man in heart boxes. Oh, it's Mr. Potts. Okay. Mr. Fox, I am so glad to come across you. We are heading home with my son when he slipped and fell into the cave ahead.
That is a problem.
I would go and try and save him, but he activated the traps. Ah, that's where all the buzzsaws have come from.
Were they playing Yu-Gi-Oh?
So he's down in the cave, so I'm going to clearly climb this ladder.
Who is this?
Lady Sands. Hello, Mr. Fox. I was going about my day until an eagle snatched some of my belongings. I think I saw it go to the very top floor. Something athletic. Can you help me? I will pay you. I can help her, but on the other hand, she seems quite rich. I wonder if she has secret treasure laying around somewhere as well. I might get her belongings, make a run for it, and carry on looking for the secret treasure. I would be the richest person alive. Does it? Okay.
You probably shouldn't have said that.
Right next to
her.
So that's interesting. We've almost got like a sort of like a physical branching point. Like, do we go into the cave or do we go up there? I don't know if we can do both or if we're going to be locked in.
Can you make that jump?
No.
Okay.
Unless we've got some sort of double jump.
It might be that. Wait, maybe you can like drop down from the room above.
Yeah. A bit of a. Okay.
Oh. What just happened?
Don't know. So I forgot to mention, I think at the start of this, I think this game is made by one person, so that's something that we're going to be taking into account as we... Okay, it was just a endless drop of death.
I see.
I remember this scene from Indiana Jones. And... Okay, I'm going to have to make that jump, aren't I?
I mean, you made it. Oh, an actual gnome.
Tiny Mr. Potts. Child picked up. Good. Ow, ow, ow.
You just regained all of your lives, but I think you lost all your money?
I think that, yeah, I died, so I lost all of my money.
We got Sonic rules here.
It seems to be. Okay, and then we come back this way. I seem to have lost the ability to jump.
That's
suboptimal. Problematic, to say the least. Okay, while I'm figuring that out, shall we jump straight into the mark scheme? Aha.
Hey.
It's come back, I don't know why.
Okay.
So yeah, overall quality, aesthetics, and all of that.
Yeah, so let's talk about the information design first. So we've got your life, the number of people you've helped, how much money you have. That seems to be most of the information. Okay.
Oh, okay, so the treasure is just an instant game over.
Interesting. So for information design, the first question is all of the key information shown? And the question there is this all the key information?
It's difficult to know, but I would say so.
Oh,
I have to hold E to try and move that.
Okay, interesting. So, like, for instance, there, when you die, you respawn in front of the old lady.
Yeah.
It's not super clear about that, but
it is nice that there's a checkpoint system.
Like, it is. Other than that, it is mostly shown, even if it may not be tutorialized super well. But you do, it shows you carrying the chest. It tells you when you pick up the child. Apparently, your progress with the chest remains.
I'm kind of grateful for that, to be honest. Holding E and having to do platforming is strangely difficult. Mr. Fox and Lady Sands grew fond of each other, however, not helping Mr. Potts get his son back the day. Well, okay, so again, we've got some initial evidence of the story engine tracking what we've done and what we've not done. So that's kind of nice.
So we have to do things in a specific order, it seems.
But yeah, sorry, information design. So we've got our life, we've got our coins. It's not necessarily clear what the coins are for other than score. I think it's probably just the score.
Yeah, I'm curious to know if it has an effect on the narrative, but we will see, I guess. So I think we definitely have most of the key information shown. There's really the only bit of information design I'm really kind of disappointed by is the lack of indication that when you're respawning, that's what happened. Like, we didn't know that you were dying in that pit at first. But I think that's it. So I'd probably say between a satisfactory and a good.
What would a good be?
Good would be that most key information is shown. Oh, sorry, no. Good would be all key information is shown. Satisfactory is most key information shown.
I would say it's probably at a good. You're right. Some of it could be perhaps shown better, like like a sort of a death sound as well, like or something just to really hammer home that yes, you have respawned. But I think otherwise, all the information is shown. Like you say, we've got an indication that we're carrying a child or that we're carrying a chest. We get nice little dings when we pick up a coin. Like, it'd be nice if some of it was shown better, like you say, like a damage sound or a whatever. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's pretty good.
The graphics. So the first thing with the graphics is whether or not they're consistent.
They're not.
No, like. Most of them are fairly consistent, but these, like the people and the UI, do not seem to mesh with the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a shame, because if we're saying that the graphics are inconsistent, that immediately puts them at a poor.
Okay. So, as you say, most of the graphics are consistent. Some of them are a little bit...
And again, as you said, like, this was done by one person, and looking for a good set of assets that does everything you need can take a long time. So I think we should maybe be a little bit forgiving here on the...
Oh, now that's interesting. Okay, so I guess that was a bug rather than a really interesting mechanic.
But to be fair, it worked.
That's
like,
very
you could still take it over there.
Yeah.
That's so strange.
Like, there's no way that happened by accident.
You had two options of how to carry it, and you chose the hardest one. Accidentally.
That's bizarre. I wonder if one of those was like they tried doing it that way and then decided against it and then put it in and somehow... Anyway, unimportant. Yeah.
Don't remove things that might break the game.
So, graphics-wise, what would a satisfactory be, say?
So satisfactory would be consistent graphics. So if we're going to be a little bit lenient on them because they didn't have that much time to search for assets, then, mostly consistent. Going up to a good would require them to be consistent and effective, and I don't think, even forgiving the little bit of inconsistency, I don't think I would be totally comfortable with describing them as effective. And although this to some extent comes in with like the information design, it's not always exactly clear what things are. Like, that bottomless pit, we had no idea that was a bottomless pit.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with you. I think, like, I would say they're probably satisfactory. Like, mostly they're consistent. The ones that aren't too jarring, although they are a little bit strange. But mostly you can tell what's what and what things are meant to be. Oh, interesting. Now I'm picking up the child that way.
This is very bizarre. Okay, so audio, we've got sound effects, we've got music.
Yeah,
I think they fit reasonably well. I would say they complement the general aesthetic reasonably well.
You can live in a tree now. Yeah, so there is actually a sort of a noise made when you get hit by a circular saw or a bird or whatever.
I couldn't hear
yeah,
that.
but it's like a you are losing money kind of noise.
Oh, okay.
Which
Interesting.
Is odd.
So with some audio effects and music, they're definitely a satisfactory. A good would be complementary audio effects and music, and there isn't a huge amount of either, and they don't necessarily mesh super well. But again, looking at it like one person making this, finding or making lots of audio assets takes a really long time. So I think I'd be happy to give them a good for that. I'd say they're complimentary.
Yeah, I would agree.
So sorry, that's a good, right? Or I suppose if we look at what an excellent would be, that would be complementary and appealing effects in music.
And yeah,
I
don't
personally find this coin sound effect really annoying.
As you know, a picking up coin sound goes, it's kind of a classic. I think it's more like
Sure.
the when you get hurt sound. It doesn't really signify perhaps what they wanted to, unless I actually am losing money. Although that time I retained a coin, and I'm not sure why. But yeah.
Okay. I think they've there's a couple of minor issues that mean they're not really doing excellent, but good.
Yeah, the music is also perhaps a little bit too sedate for this sort of relatively fast-paced platforming, but
that's true. Okay. So that's the presentation and the quality. Meaningful play. What are the mechanics we've got? So you can jump, you can pick up coins, you can pick up special quest items, you can hit things that injure you. You can talk to people. You can climb ladders.
Yeah. So while not wildly complex, there is definitely a set of different mechanics at play here.
I think the carrying people being so awkward
it's so weird.
Is an interesting one, but I think it's fair to say these are reasonably complementary mechanics.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that.
So we've got a set of complementary mechanics. It's not a wide set. The question is, again, because it's been done by one person, do we want to... They have got, I think, a pretty decent set of mechanics for one person's work.
Yeah.
So should we put them to halfway to a wide set?
I think that's probably fair, yeah.
Okay, what would that be? I've lost the track of it. There we go. That's halfway between a good and an excellent. Cool. Controls. Well, we've had the holding E is annoying. But how is the rest of it?
They are broadly speaking all right. Like the jump, the jump's mostly fine, as is the crouch. There are a couple of... I'm trying to find the words to describe it. Like, the jump feels like you sort of get a little bit stuck at the point, you sort of bounce off the coins in a bit of an odd way, and very occasionally you sort of lose the ability to jump. Although, I don't know whether we file that under bugs
that
or...
would count as a bug rather than a control issue.
Yeah. The fact that you slide down the slopes and sort of jump off them oddly, I think, is my biggest bugbear with it, like this bit here. But
it does look a bit janky.
So, they're fine. They're usable. I don't know if I'd call them
usable, but not smooth controls.
Yeah, I think that's probably alright.
Okay. So that puts them solidly at a satisfactory.
Actually, yeah. Like another illustrative point, like sort of occasionally getting stuck on the ladders here.
Yeah. So, bugs. First of all, is the game reasonably complex? I think it's reasonably complex.
Again, sort of looking at the perspective of, there were effectively half the people working on it.
Yeah.
It's, sufficient for the sort of thing that I would expect.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely more complex than some of the games we've had in previous years that were done by two people. So, I think that's fair. There are definitely minor bugs, where you got stuck not being able to jump. There's potentially a bug with the way that carrying things works. The question is, are there serious bugs? Are they significant enough to count as serious?
I mean, I've certainly not found anything that's needed me to restart, so I wouldn't say they're particularly serious, no.
Okay, so we've got reasonably complex, but there are minor bugs. Would be a satisfactory. Good would be that there are infrequent minor bugs. And I think they're a little bit too common for that.
Yeah, I think that's... Hang on, why am I going this way? I think that's probably what I would say as well.
Okay.
Like now, for example.
No. Perfect demonstration. Okay, so the next part is the brief. So for this, they needed to make a story engine and give the player some kind of agency. So, does the game world affect the story?
Game world affects the story, yes, because the route you pick, whether you actually complete some of the quests and things, affects this sort of epilogue section.
Yeah.
So,
and again,
yeah.
it's not just like you go somewhere and hit one button and then go back and hit a different button, you get a different ending. Like, you have to physically carry stuff around to achieve.
Yes, I mean it's quite close to that, but it's definitely, the story engine is definitely tracking some of your actions.
So there are definitely some examples where the game world impacts the story, which puts them at a satisfactory. To get to a good, you would need a number of examples where the game world impacts the story in important ways, which, like, I guess they are in important ways because, like, they change.
They change the ending, yeah.
They change the ending.
So this is the thing. There are a number of things that change it, because there are effectively 3 different endings, at least 3, possibly 4. I've lost count.
So you've got do everything, steal the money.
You've got steal the money,
return the money, and not rescue the child.
Yeah, you've got steal the money or don't steal the money, and then each variation of those with did you rescue the child or not. And I think this is going to be something I talk about in a moment again. Again, even though it's only one person, there's not a huge amount of story at play, and that's partly why there's only a couple of these sort of points within the engine that have those changes. So I think maybe it's not fully all the way there, but probably halfway between the two at least. What do you think?
I think like when in the past we've criticized people a fair amount for the choices only really affecting the ending and not having any kind of narrative in between.
So this is the thing. There isn't. The game is very short. There isn't much other than that choice and that ending. There isn't a lot in between those two things, is the thing. And I'm kind of, again, giving the benefit of the doubt because one person working on it. But
I think it would have been better if instead of going for these kind of, you have 4 different endings essentially, maybe have a smaller number of endings but have like different progression through the narrative. Like essentially move the kind of 2 choices both resolving at the end to kind of happen more gradually, so there's more of a kind of narrative arc. But okay, I think putting it partway between satisfactory and good is fair.
Okay, and then for effectively the reverse of that, so where does the story impact the gameplay? So this, I think,
it doesn't. I don't think.
That's a slightly trickier thing. So do they perhaps mention it in their game notes?
Let us see. How does the narrative impact the game world? When tasks are given and taken / not taken by characters in the game world, the players will have to navigate through different sections of the map. So they're saying if you choose to do certain parts of the narrative, you go to different parts of the game, which I don't...
That's not the story having an impact on the gameplay, though, I would say.
No.
I can kind of see the argument they're making, but it's not as though, for example, making a choice within the context of the story unlocks a whole extra part of the map.
Yeah, like you can do that even if you don't talk to anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
You can go and recover the chest.
Like,
So
if, for example, we had a conversation with one of these NPCs, and as a result they said, "Oh, I trust you now. Here's the key to the secret treasure," or whatever. That would that would be impacting the gameplay because it either unlocks a new area, or you can do things where it unlocks new mechanics. But I don't think it quite does that in this.
Yeah, so I think a great example of that actually would be if you did say rescue that guy's kid. If he's like, "Ooh, I have a spare key to the lady's treasure room, you can have it as reward," then that both, you get that story affecting gameplay, and also I think
helps reinforce some of it.
When we're later on, when we're talking about other parts of the narrative, I think it makes it a lot more interesting, gives you kind of more of these branching decisions and stuff. So I think as it is though, I would there seems to be no effect of the narrative on the game world.
Yes, I think I'd probably agree with that.
So if we start at poor, that is that there is some support for story elements in the game, but story has no real impact on the game world, which
sort of feels like that is a good descriptor of it.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the one on if we go look at the two on either side, going down from poor, it would be there is a story premise but no serious attempt to integrating the story with the game, which I feel could also describe that. And if we go up to pass, we've got a few sparse or minor examples of where the story affects the game world, which I don't think they have. But
I
can see there is an argument to keep it at poor, because
I don't think it's totally absent, because so this is verging on gameplay affecting the story again, but for example, like the game ends at a particular narrative point, like depending on
that's true. If you go straight to just stealing the chest, it ends the game, and that does kind of affect the gameplay. That is an example of you make a narrative choice and it locks off part of the game. So actually that one example makes me think that I would argue that to put it as a pass, because there is one example where a narrative choice affects the game world, and again, with this only being done by half a team essentially, having at least one example of that, I think is enough, I would say, to give them the benefit of the doubt and put it at a pass.
I would say it's perhaps a tenuous example, because it doesn't so much as affect the game world as, remove you from it.
Sure,
but I would say,
if you were to say change the structure, if rather than just being a hard end, when you go into that, it say locks off the cave because there's a cave in or something, it has the same effect from gameplay wise. It does feel kind of different, but looking at the kind of graph of options you can take.
Do you want to say halfway between the two, or do you want to strongly argue for?
I don't want to strongly argue. I see your point that it's not a great example.
Okay, in which case let's put it halfway between the two. There's there is an example,
attempt,
but it's not somewhat tenuous. But okay. Which takes us on to agency, I believe.
Yes. Branching points. How many branching points does the story have? So
that's kind of interesting, because there's not necessarily moments of branching, because you can always go back to it until you've hit the end.
Yeah.
But
it's there is one branching point, but where you can go in 4 directions.
There's there's a branching point when you complete it effectively. So when you give the guy his son back, that then branches the story, because now you can't go back to the other one.
to be fair though, we're thinking about this if in terms of like a lot of the narrative games you get, where like you have a linear story where at periods along the story you make a decision that splits it, and then maybe it comes back together. But if we think about like the kind of narrative landscape side of things, having that kind of like essentially a sort of hub world where then you have different areas you can go, and like there are branching decisions you can make that happen like instantaneously. Like the point of deciding do you go in the cave or not does happen at a specific point during the run through. You just have an option of when it occurs. So it's kind of got one of those, it's got a more open narrative landscape essentially.
Yeah, I'm certainly not criticizing it for not having a sort of telltale style, so and so will remember that moment. So what are the choices that we make? We can choose to save the sun or not.
And then we can choose to either return the small chest or steal the big one.
Yeah. Whether they are interesting choices or not. So how interesting the choices is, it goes under quality of choices. So we have some branching points. I'd be tempted to say that we have some minor branching points, because again they change the ending, and you have interesting. Oh no. Not like this.
You're in the walls now.
Anyway, yeah, minor branching points, which would be a what on the mark scheme?
That would be a pass.
Okay.
And then in terms of the quality of the choices, they are like moral questions, particularly do you take the easy route and steal shitloads of money, or do you put a lot more effort in to return and do the right thing? That, there's no real, it doesn't have a huge effect on gameplay or progression or anything, but it is a narrative choice that I think is interesting.
That's the thing, in terms of gameplay and whatnot, I would say it's mechanically it's not necessarily an interesting choice, because it's a case of, do you want to play an extra bit of the game or do you want to just skip it?
Yeah. That's the same with the cave. You can choose to just not do part of the game, which
mechanically kind of boring, because you don't want to remove gameplay from the player. But in terms of sort of narratively, morally, it's a reasonably interesting choice. Do you rob from the rich lady, or do you help her out in return for a lesser reward? But then it turns out that blossoms into a budding friendship or whatever.
You get her money anyway.
Yeah. So I would say it's pros and cons to some of these choices. So
I think
go ahead.
We have few choices, but they're few interesting choices, because there are at least a bit of narrative interest there, which would put both parts of agency at a pass. And again, going back to the fact that this is one person making this, so it's significantly more difficult to get those kind of having more choices when you just don't have as much.
You're not able to split the workload as effectively. Yeah. Okay. So that moves us on to the design section.
Yes. So the poetics of gameplay. How well do the narrative and gameplay reinforce the themes?
So the theme. So, despite the main character being a fox, I believe they've based this off of the fable of the tortoise and the eagle.
They do not say.
I am pretty sure it is based on that, because that's what it says in the files they handed in. And
I guess that would make sense. You can choose to just nick everything.
So it really becomes apparent here, basically. Money does not bring happiness. It brings.
Yeah.
So the eagle and the tortoise is all about, if you actually get everything that you wish for, it might end in disaster for you. That kind of thing. And to an extent,
there's a secret section of the map. Is
there? Interesting.
Where the secret treasure is, which unlocks 2 different endings. Okay, so is the ladder counting it? Oh, all right. Okay, so it's the eagle and the tortoise.
So to an extent, yeah, that theme is apparent, mostly in that sort of epilogue section. I would say, again, mechanically through the rest of the game, not really particularly present at all.
No,
not
I don't
actively work. Part of it is we have all of these coins that we're collecting, and that sort of ties into the overall message of, the actually getting great riches isn't going to be good for you kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But we're never penalized for getting all of these coins, but we're also never really incentivized to get them. There's no reason to pick up all of these coins other than we lose them when we die.
But if you run out of coins, it doesn't it's the health that actually matters.
Yeah, so I guess all the coins is a score at the end, and given that the score at the end is actually, the good ending is falling in love with this person rather than getting all of the money, maybe that does actually work against it a little bit.
Yeah. If you were to be, I think if I was to be very, very generous, I would say there are a few places, not all of them, but there are a few places where there are coins put directly in the paths of enemies. So you can argue that the trying to get all of the money is directly harmful to you, but you then get places like this where there's just a bunch of coins.
And weirdly, this doesn't factor into the moral choices. So again, it would be nice if maybe, because I only get the bad ending if I then take the big chest. It doesn't matter if I steal all of this gold. So again,
you can take the loose change, but that's it.
Yeah. So what would a pass be for thematics?
So a pass would be that narrative and gameplay have some conflicts. Some of the mechanics go against the themes of the story, which
again feels kind of
So a satisfactory would be the narrative and gameplay do not interfere with one another, but have the mechanics have little to do with the themes of the story. And I feel like you're right that the kind of presence of these coins does sort of go against the theme, but I don't think it massively undermines it. It just kind of makes it a bit more confused.
Fair enough. Do you want to maybe put it halfway between the two then?
Do I? Actually, let's see if we go down from a pass to see what that's compared with. The narrative and gameplay are in conflict. The key mechanics are opposed to the themes. Actually, yeah, reading what a poor would be, I think it is actually very solidly a pass.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. They're not, like you say, they're not actively and dramatically conflicting with the theme, but they are confusing it.
Yeah. Oh, and there's the other part of that is that if the themes of the story being unclear also contributes towards the poor. So again, we've worked out what it is, but it's not immediately obvious. So I think the pass is reasonable.
Okay. And the next is pacing. Pacing wise,
you do literally ascend.
You do. You then do technically descend to the ending.
Yeah. I think that is maybe a bit too literal a reading.
In terms of the difficulty, it doesn't vary too much.
No,
the enemies and traps are relatively consistent throughout. The narrative pacing is, I would almost suggest that rescuing a child from a cave is actually a more dramatic thing to do than rescuing a treasure chest from an eagle. So yeah, I would say
it's also the only place with the pit of infinite death.
arguably, they have maybe based this off of the hero's journey. You know, first we have the descent into the belly of the beast, and then we have the sort of rising, the apotheosis, and that might be a little too generous.
I do, yeah. Especially because you can just go a different route.
So yeah, I would say the pacing is maybe it's somewhat.
I would say unclear.
Interesting. I would say somewhat flat.
I mean, unclear or flat are in the same category, so
That's handy then.
that would put it as a pass.
So
The other, well,
what would it need to be for a satisfactory?
for a satisfactory, it would need to be some ascending pacing. The interesting thing, so we've got, if you go down to poor, there is no serious attempt to control pacing. And I'd kind of be tempted to argue that they haven't done anything to control the pacing. Like, as you said, like, the amount of traps and enemies is pretty consistent everywhere.
Remember, this isn't just mechanical pacing, this is narrative pacing predominantly.
True.
And we
So
do
you start
have...
off with, I'm close to the treasure, and then I have to go rescue a child, and then rescue or steal some treasure. So I guess, yeah, the narrative pacing does increase, so it's definitely above a poor.
Okay, so should we say that's a pass?
Yeah. Let's give them a pass for pacing. And the next one is the techniques of game writing.
Okay.
So we have dialogue.
So we have dialogue, which is quite nice.
We have epilogue summary thing.
We have internal monologues as well, arguably as well.
Yeah, because it's not just conversations with other characters. He's essentially narrating his own adventure, which. Okay, so we've got three kind of various forms of writing. I think that's all of them, but 3 types of game writing.
Well, 3 variations on a theme, really, but I don't know. The epilogue is.
I would say the epilogue is definitely separate. Maybe the dialogue and the internal monologue are maybe a bit too close to kind of separate, but it's still at least 2 techniques.
Yeah, I think. So again, single person's work, taking that into account. However, I think there's probably some very easy things they could have done, like as well. So obviously not fully rendered cutscenes, but perhaps a choice in the dialogue where we get to select the fox's response, or even the fox's internal monologue, like a little. Like, even if it doesn't necessarily have an impact on the agency, having that sense of false agency is an interesting technique to sort of let us.
When you hand the child back over to the dad. Oh, sorry. When you hand the child back over to his dad, is it just the little dialogue response from the dad, or is there any change in the? Is there any animation or change in the assets or anything to indicate happiness?
Not that I have noticed,
because I have not been watching it that carefully. But if there was something even say their faces change and they smile, that again would then be a use of the visual design to convey the narrative. I like that he's saying the child is the treasure he seeks. Or at least that's what it seems like at the moment.
But yeah, so I don't think that is present. We'll give it a look in a second. But other than that,
so the use of more than one game writing technique. Okay, yeah, they stand there.
Continue staring dead-eyed.
Use of more than one game writing technique still puts them solidly in a good. To get up to excellent, they would need appropriate and consistent use of more than one game writing technique. And I think part of the issue here is that because it's so relatively short, they don't have a chance to establish consistent patterns.
Okay, so let's leave that as a good and then move on to the next bit, which is feedback.
So what was their feedback? Okay, so this is a case that because of the issues with finding and assigning partners, they weren't able to get feedback in the feedback session because they didn't have, they didn't know what they were doing yet, apparently.
So while I understand and sympathise with that, there have been multiple sessions where people get feedback, like myself and the other lecturers have a Discord running where we can sort of share feedback and give advice. We're also always able to be emailed for these kinds of things. So I think just saying, oh well, we didn't have an idea at that point, so we couldn't get any feedback is not really a suitable response there. So unfortunately the only mark we can give them there is absent.
Yeah.
Okay, but
that is the end of the mark scheme.
So yeah, other than that, perhaps I think again for a single person, this is a reasonable attempt at a nice prototype.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And that's our last game for this batch. So we will see you soon for another video. Bye bye.